Hey guys, Ashley from LTK Cuties here. Today I'm going to show you the beginning rows of the Meadow Slippers. I have a lot of people that are confused about the increased rows, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a demonstration of the first 4 rows. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Burnett Baby Velvet yarn, and it's a size 4, and then your hook size that is stated in the pattern. Okay, so you're going to make a magic circle, and you're going to do the 4 puffs. So I chain 2, so 1 puff, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now close your circle and join to your first stitch. Oops. Okay, so you have 4 puffs plus the chains in between equals 8 stitches. Okay, so round 2, chain 2. Then you're going to do a puff in the first space right here. So make your puff that you just did. Oops. Okay, now you're going to start your first cluster puff leg. So you yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull up, and that's in the same stitch. Okay, you got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops. Now locate your next space, and you're going to finish in that space. So you got your 5, you got your 9 loops, pull through, chain 1. Okay, so now you have a puff, cluster puff. Okay, in the same space right here that you just finished this leg in, you're going to do another puff. And we're going to close, chain 1. Okay, and in the same stitch again, you're going to make your first cluster puff leg. It's in the same space. So yarn over, okay? Now you're going to finish that cluster puff in this next space. So yarn over. I keep hitting my thing, I'm so sorry. Okay, and now you're going to make a puff again in the same space. And this is what helps us increase for the cluster puff stitch. Okay, there's your puff. Now you're going to start your cluster puff again in the same stitch, or space, sorry, finishing in the next space right here. So once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. But it does look so confusing with all the words. But I just try to explain it so nicely. But it can be overwhelming and intimidating for sure. Okay, so you just finished that cluster puff. Now you're going to make another puff, same space. Okay, now we are making our last cluster puff leg. So same stitch or space. Sorry, I keep saying stitch. Okay, now you have your chain 2 from your previous row, which does not count as a stitch, and then your puff. So you're not gonna do your last cluster puff leg there. You're gonna do it in your first space of your first stitch. So yarn over, which you already did, and insert it in that first space. And then yarn over again, pull up, boom. And then chain 2 or chain 1 to close it. And then you're going to join to your first stitch. Okay, and this helps prevent from having holes. I know a lot of you probably were doing it in that space and joining and having a hole, but this prevents it from having a hole, and also it's like an invisible seam. Once you get going and you see it, it's like it just looks like it's just supposed to be there. Okay, now row 3, chain 2. Okay, and you're gonna do your puff in the same first space. There's your puff. Okay, now you're gonna start your first cluster puff leg in the same space, finishing in this space. Okay. Okay, now we are going to make another cluster puff leg in the same space. Okay, now we are going to finish the cluster puff in this next space. Okay, so we just did a puff, cluster puff, cluster puff. Now we are going to do a puff here in the same space. Oops. Okay, now you did your puff. Now you're going to do your first cluster puff leg, same space, finishing it in this space. Okay, and then you're going to start your next cluster puff again in the same space. And you're going to finish it in this next space right here. Okay, now you did puff, cluster puff, cluster puff, puff, cluster puff, cluster puff. Now you're going to do another puff in the same space. Okay, and then now you're going to start your cluster puff leg again in the same space, finishing it in this space. Okay, and then you're going to do another cluster puff, same space, finishing in the next space. Okay, now you're going to do another puff in the same space. And start your cluster puff leg in the same space as it all, finishing in the next space. Okay, and then you're going to start your last cluster puff in the same space. Okay, finishing it in this space right here. Okay, right there. All right, and then you join to your first stitch. Okay, and it's really so simple. I know it says, you know, do it 2 times, and a lot of people are confused by that. So, you know, the next row 4, you're going to do it the same as you did this row, except you're going to have another cluster puff. So you do puff, cluster puff, cluster puff, cluster puff, puff, and then you continue doing that. And then round 5, you do your regular cluster puffs, and then your increased rows are finished. So row 4 is your last increased row. Okay? And if you have any other questions, you can contact me anytime, and I'm glad to help. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you find it super helpful.